And today we're looking at Kesha's song, Praying. And it's a powerful song about someone who kind of dealt with long-term abuse in their life. And I don't know if you have ever heard the backstory on this or even know who Kesha is, but just pretend that you do. She was a young artist, I think about 18 years old, and she signed this record contract with this guy named Dr. Luke, which is an exciting thing for a young artist. You know, to get signed by a record label is like a really big deal. Like, that's the dream, and she was really excited about it. But as time went on, this guy named Dr. Luke became manipulative and abusive. And some of the accusations she's made against this guy are really bad. I mean, emotional abuse. He repeatedly told her that she was nothing without him. Nothing. And something about that, man, like if you hear that enough, like from somebody who has influence over you, that like starts to, you start to believe it. And she's also made sexual abuse allegations. Like it's been a really nasty road she's had to walk with this guy. And he held this contract that they signed over her head. She could not get out of this contract. And he kind of used that, the fear and the power that he had from that to keep her from doing anything. He actually prevented her from being able to even release music for a while. That's how nasty this got. The worst part about it is this song, Praying, it's a message from her to this guy. This guy who has this contract with her. And what's crazy is even though the song is directed at him, he still technically benefits from her art. Because of their ongoing legal battle, he actually benefited from this song that is actually kind of calling him out. Talk about salt in the wound, right? So if you've ever been in an abusive relationship or dealt with someone who was manipulative for a long period of time, you can really resonate with this song. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if you've heard it before, but she expresses her pain and her trying to deal with that really, really well. It's almost magnetic when you hear that song. And overall, I would say the message of the song was a good message. She hopes her abuser is somewhere praying. She hopes he gets better. That's a good message, if she means it. I would also say the message that the abuse that she endured somehow made her stronger, made her a better person. That's a really good message, man. We need that. If you've been through something or if you're going through something right now, to remember that thing that is really hard is actually turning you in to a better person. That's a really good message to believe. There's just one issue with the song, just one. If I ask you the question, based on this song alone, do you think Kesha has forgiven her abuser? What would you say? See, I know it's not a fair question, right? To make a giant assumption about the state of someone's heart based on a song that they sung, that's not a fair question. But again, the whole point of the series is for us to look at these songs and kind of think critically about what we listen to. So if you look at this song that she's singing, is this where you want to live your life? The state that she kind of pours out, the state of her heart, is that the goal for the people who have wronged us? Do we want to feel the same way about them that she feels about him? Is that the end of the road? See, if you're like me, you want to say she's made some progress, but there's some barbs in there. So I want to share this with you. I've shared it with you before if you're familiar with Mosaic. My mentor has explained forgiveness to me this way. Here's what he says about forgiveness. Forgiveness is a decision that leads through a process to a state. It's a decision, process, state. So it's a decision first. You have to decide to forgive somebody, right? You can't skip that step. You're not going to wake up one morning all of a sudden going, oh my gosh, I totally forgave them. I didn't even think about it. Like it's not just going to surprise you. You have to make that decision. Time does not heal all wounds. It doesn't. That's a lie. If you don't make the decision to forgive, it's kind of like leaving a knife in a wound. You can get stabbed, leave the knife, time will heal this. No, it won't. You're going to have to pull that out. And maybe then, and even then it might need some work. So time does not heal all wounds. You need to make that decision, and the decision will lead you to a process, a 2 steps forward, 3 steps backward process. The deeper the pain, the longer the process. And then eventually you'll get to the state of forgiveness, the state where the pain doesn't sting the same way, where your heart rate doesn't increase when you see the person, where you don't think about what they did to you and what you want to do to them when you're driving down the road. You know what I'm saying? Like you'll get to a place where that stuff doesn't happen anymore, and that's when you finally kind of arrived at the state of forgiveness. So if we use this explanation, where would you say Kesha is based on this explanation of forgiveness? See, you want to say here, right? She's in process. She's in process. And maybe even singing the song is a part of her process, trying to work through this stuff. There's just one line in the song, just one line. That makes me hesitate and think, man, maybe she hasn't even started the process yet. Maybe she's still struggling with the decision to even start to forgive. I think the only option you can't pick is that she is at the state of forgiveness. Please don't think that what she sings in that song is what forgiveness looks like, because it's not. It's not. So here's what I want to do today. I want to talk about what happens when you don't make the decision to forgive. So if you're sitting here and you've got somebody, hey, listen, maybe something really not, like I don't know what's happened to you in your life, but maybe you're sitting here going, I've not decided to forgive that person yet. I want to talk to you about what could happen to you if you don't ever make that decision. And not just that, I also want to talk to you if you feel like you're stuck in the process, this messy middle part here. Maybe you made the decision, but you're in process. And I want to talk to you about what happens if you stay in process too long. If maybe you're using the fact that you're in process as an excuse to stay in the same place, to not move. I want to talk to you about what happens if you do that as well, if you just kind of sit down in the road that's supposed to lead to the state, and if you just sit there for too long, I want to talk to you about what happens there too. So if you would, pray with me, and then we're going to jump in. Jesus, I thank you for today, and I know this subject, Lord, is such an important one. And I pray for the people right now, Lord, if when I talk about forgiveness, somebody pops into their mind, Lord, I pray for them right now. That you would be here, that your voice would be heard, and that we would be open to doing what you ask us to do this morning. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right, I want to tell you about a guy today in the Bible who I'm guessing you've never heard of. I venture to say I think nobody here has heard of this guy. It's a little arrogant of me, but I really don't think that you have heard of him, even if you grew up in church, even if you did the whole church thing for your whole life. The reason I say it is because I did and I hadn't heard of him, so I'm just assuming that anyways, it's my own problem. His name is Ahithophel. Ahithophel. Is your favorite Bible character? No. He won't be after today either. I love finding stuff in the Bible that I've never heard of before. Like I geek out when I find stuff like this. So I have been sitting on this story for like a year. I'm so excited to tell this to you. We're going to learn some stuff today. Okay? We're going to learn. You will not forget this guy's story. You might forget his name because it kind of sounds like his mom sneezed, and that's what he got called. Ahithophel. But I tell you what, this story is it's so crazy. You're not even going to believe it. And if you've ever been deeply wounded by somebody and you struggle to forgive, his story is a really, really important story for you to look at. So I'm going to paraphrase the story. I can't read the whole thing because his story is tied into other people's story, and for the whole thing, we'd just be sitting here reading the whole time. So David is king of Israel. All right, y'all know who David is, right? David and Goliath, he eventually becomes king, and he's the king. And David is really good at surrounding himself with good people. And one of the good people that he surrounds himself with as king is Ahithophel. Ahithophel is David's advisor, okay? He helps David make decisions. He gives David advice as to how to deal with the different things going on. And he's really, really good at it. And he kind of helps build David's kingdom. He's right there with him. So David's a really good king, right? But as good of a king as David is, he's a really crappy dad. I don't know if you know that about David, but David's not a good father. He makes a lot of bad choices as a father. And some of those choices as a father lead to one of his own sons starting a rebellion against him and his kingship, okay? His son Absalom tries to lead this rebellion against his dad, stirs up a bunch of people to throw him off his throne, take his crown, try to kill him. So by the way, side note, parents, you think you have it bad when your kids rebel? Do they try to kill you? That's where David's at. So this rebellion, Absalom is leading this rebellion. And in the middle of the rebellion, Ahithophel sides with Absalom instead of David. He is a traitor. He turns sides and he supports the young upstart trying to take the throne. And for a brief period of time, Absalom's rebellion works. David ends up having to flee the capital city of Jerusalem. He has to leave because Absalom's coming and they can't stop him, so he has to run. And he's out on the run in the wilderness hiding, and Absalom arrives in Jerusalem, and he's in the palace, and he now has declared himself to be king. Now the battle hasn't happened yet, but he's like, hey, I'm here. I'm in the palace. And Absalom is sitting down to kind of make decisions. What do I do next? I've got Jerusalem, so what are we going to do? And he starts asking, and one of the people he asks what to do is Ahithophel. And Ahithophel is going to give Absalom two pieces of advice here. And I just want to warn you, they're both really, really messed up. Really messed up advice that he's about to give him. So Ahithophel tells him the first piece of advice is found in 2 Samuel 16. Here's what he tells Absalom to do. Go and sleep with your father's concubines, for he has left them here to look after the palace. Then all Israel will know that you have insulted your father beyond hope of reconciliation, and they will throw their support to you. So they set up a tent on the palace roof where everyone could see, and Absalom went in and had sex with his father's concubines. That is messed up. Messed up on multiple levels. We don't even have time to go into how many levels of messed up that is, right? There's messed up before you even get here, and I know. If you're sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, you should be. That's crazy, right? That's crazy. And it's kind of a power move, right? He's trying to exert his dominance and send this message, but it also, it seems like there's more to it than that, doesn't it? Why would Ahithophel tell him to do this? And all the specifics, even the palace roof. Why? Seems a little bit like it's too hot for the situation. But he's not done yet. So Absalom says, what should I do? Ahithophel says, do this. He goes and does this, and he comes back. And then now they're having the conversation. Okay, what now? What's my next move? And here's Ahithophel's second piece of advice for Absalom. In 17:1-2, he says, now Ahithophel urged Absalom. He didn't just give him advice. He's urging him. He has skin in the game, wants him to take his advice here. Let me choose 12,000 men to start after David tonight. I will catch up with him while he is weary and discouraged. He and his troops will panic. Everyone will run away. Then I will kill only the king. So that's his second piece of advice. Now this is odd advice for a couple reasons. First of all, Ahithophel is an old man. I'll explain how I know that in a minute, but he's an old man. Secondly, he's not a warrior. He's not a soldier. He's like a sage. He doesn't spend a bunch of time in the arena with a sword and a shield. He spends time in the library with books. You know what I'm saying? That's the kind of guy Ahithophel is. And David's a bad dude, as we all know, right? David is not a slouch. He's a warrior king. David takes down giants. He's a military strategist. So for an old dude who's not a soldier, not a general, not a military strategist, to say, I'm going to go take out the warrior king, I'm going to assassinate the warrior king, that's a weird plan. That's just a weird plan. And he specifically says that I will kill only the king. I'm going to do it. Absalom, you just you stay here, you do your thing. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to take it. And so what happens, this is his second piece of advice, but Absalom has other advisors. So Ahithophel's one of them, and then there's this other advisor. Now the cool thing about this advisor is he's secretly still loyal to David. So he gives different advice from Ahithophel. He doesn't want Ahithophel to go do this. He gives us different advice that he wants to secretly send a back alley message to David to let them know what's coming so David can kind of get ready for whatever Absalom chooses to do. But Absalom goes with his advice rather than Ahithophel's advice. So Ahithophel does not get to go do this. Absalom actually wants to be the one to go fight his dad. So Ahithophel doesn't get to do it. And here's what happens next. This is, again, the story just continues to get more and more confusing. In 1723, when Ahithophel realized that his advice had not been followed, he saddled his donkey, went to his hometown, set his affairs in order, and hanged himself. He died there. He was buried in the family tomb. What's up with that? Why would he do that? I get that it's not cool when somebody doesn't take your advice. I don't like that either, but I don't know. Bit of an over-exaggeration, or, what, really? Why? Why would you end your life? And matter of fact, everything in this story seems like an overreaction, right? Why side with Absalom in the first place? You're David's advisor. Why switch sides? Why tell Absalom to sleep with David's concubine, specifically on the palace roof? What's up with that? Like, why so detailed? Why ask to lead the attack on David? Why ask to be the one to kill David? Why go kill yourself when your plans don't get followed? There has to be more to the story, right? There has to be something we're not seeing here. So Ahithophel is actually found elsewhere in the Bible. If you jump over to chapter 23, there's this list of people, and Ahithophel's in it. 23:34. Eliam, son of Ahithophel from Gilo. Eliam, in this list that's in 2 Samuel 23, what Eliam is one of David's mighty men. And if you've never read the list of David's mighty men, it's really cool. It's in 2 Samuel chapter 23. You have to check it out. It's really, really cool. It's this list of like the toughest, baddest dudes in Israel. And David's got this list of guys like he goes to when he needs something done. These guys are the guys, and they are just bad, bad dudes. And Eliam is one of them. He is one of David's mighty men. And Ahithophel's his daddy. Which, if you stop right there, you're thinking, well, even more so he should be loyal to David, right? He's one of David's top advisors. His son is one of David's top warriors. What are you doing, Ahithophel? But this isn't the only place we see Eliam's name. So if we jump over to chapter 11, we find Eliam's name. And if you grew up in church, you're going to recognize this story immediately. You're going to know what's going on. If not, I'll explain. 2 Samuel chapter 11. 2 and 3. Late one afternoon, after his midday rest, David got out of bed and was walking on the roof of his palace. He looked out over the city and he noticed a woman of unusual beauty taking a bath. He sent someone to find out who she was. He was told she is Bathsheba, daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite. Okay. So Bathsheba is Ahithophel's granddaughter. And if you aren't familiar with the story, David sees Bathsheba from the palace roof in a way he should not have seen her. Brought her to the palace, has sex with her, gets her pregnant, wants to cover it up, doesn't know what to do, ends up killing Uriah. And then takes Bathsheba as his wife. So David used his power to take Ahithophel's granddaughter and kill her husband. And Ahithophel never forgot that. He brewed and marinated on bitterness toward David for 10 years until Absalom comes along and presents this opportunity for revenge. Which explains everything, right? All of a sudden now everything makes sense. That's why he jumped on the rebellion so quickly. He couldn't get over his little girl, his little granddaughter, being abused like this. It's why he told Absalom to do what he told Absalom to do, specifically on the roof of the palace. It was poetic justice for Ahithophel. Oh, okay, David, you're gonna do that? Well, here, I'm gonna humiliate you in the exact same place. It's why he wanted to lead the attack on David. It's why he wanted to be the one to stick the knife between David's ribs. And why, when he realized his revenge could not be had, he couldn't do it anymore. He was done. Killed himself. This was all a revenge plot 10 years in the making. Ahithophel chose to never forgive. He never made that choice. He did not go through the process of forgiveness. Instead, he held on to the offense. He allowed anger to course through his veins. He convinced himself that David had to pay for what David did. And nobody made David pay, so he was going to be the one to make David pay. And he became trapped in the quicksand of his own bitterness. And the consequences of Ahithophel's bitterness are huge. Many scholars believe that he was probably one of the people who whispered in Absalom's ear to even start the rebellion in the first place. And this rebellion was costly. Thousands of people died because of this rebellion. The pain and damage caused was massive because Ahithophel chose to never let go. The consequences of unforgiveness and bitterness affected everyone. Spread out like a fire and consumed everybody in its path. And it ultimately killed Ahithophel. One line in Kesh's song. One line. One incredibly damaging lie that if you believe it, you could end up like Ahithophel. She said this, I don't know if you caught it. Some things only God can forgive. I bet Ahithophel told himself that for years, right? It's like a justification, right? It's an excuse to hold on to the thing. Only God can forgive, so I got to keep this. I can't, only God can. This is why I would worry for Kesha. If you believe it is impossible to forgive something, you'll never make the decision to forgive. Why would you, right? I mean, if pain and bitterness feels like an ocean above your head and you're stuck on the ocean floor and you don't think you're going to make it to the surface, why would you even start swimming? Some things only God can forgive. See, but we know different. Ephesians 4:31 and 32 says this, get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, and slander, as well as all types of evil behavior. Instead, be kind to each other, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, just as God, through Christ, has forgiven you. So as Christians, we know that forgiveness isn't optional, right? We are commanded to forgive because we have been forgiven. Jesus' death and resurrection purchased our forgiveness. And we're forgiven, and forgiven people forgive. It's actually the mark of a true Christian. If you want to know somebody, if somebody is a Christian, it's whether or not they forgive. One of the marks. Forgiveness should flavor our lives. We have been forgiven of everything, therefore we should forgive anything. Now, that doesn't make it easy, right? I'm just stating that as Christians, we are commanded to forgive. It is a blanket commandment. There is no exceptions. There's no asterisks. Forgiveness is something that flows through us. God forgives us, we forgive others. But that doesn't mean it's easy. That doesn't mean it's easy. Philip Yancey says it this way. Unforgiveness plays like a background static of life for families, nations, and institutions. Unforgiveness is sadly our natural human state. We nurse sores, go to elaborate lengths to rationalize our behavior, perpetuate family feuds, punish ourselves, and punish others, all to avoid the most unnatural act of forgiving. So maybe what Kesha is realizing in her song is that forgiveness is not easy. Maybe she's recognizing that it feels unnatural, that the process will be really long, really messy, maybe too long, too messy for her. Or maybe she's rightly recognizing that some things, like forgiveness, is like a supernatural act. It's not natural, it doesn't come naturally, it's supernatural for some things. So maybe a better line in her song would have been, some things without God, you can't forgive. Not some things only God can forgive. Some things without God, you can't forgive. I know it wouldn't have fit the song, but it still would have been better than what she said. With God, yes. Without God, Jesus' death on the cross and resurrection is both the reason we forgive and the thing that enables us to forgive. It is God's power working in us that fuels our forgiveness. On your own, maybe you can't. Maybe some of the stuff done to you, you can't let it go on your own. You're going to need God to move in your heart. You're going to need Jesus to step in and do something to allow you to let that stuff go. So my main message for you today, man, is if you have not chosen to forgive somebody in your life today, make the decision. Make the decision. And start the process of healing. I know it's not something to look forward to, but make the decision. Because listen, you can choose bitterness or you can choose forgiveness, but if you refuse to choose, you're choosing bitterness, just so you know. Because if you're sitting there going, well, I'm not choosing bitterness, but I sure as heck ain't choosing forgiveness either. Well, guess what? You're going to float this way. This is downstream. If you choose nothing, you're choosing bitterness. It's passive. And bitterness ends up destroying you, not the person you're bitter towards, by the way, right? David didn't die because of Ahithophel's bitterness. Ahithophel did. So if you haven't made the decision, make the decision. But this message is also for you if you have made the decision to forgive and you're in process. I worry that you might be using the excuse that you are in process to stay stuck. You're using the excuse that it's a 2 steps forward, 3 steps backward process. But guess what? You've made about 10 steps backward and no steps forward lately. And you're like kind of closing your eyes to that. Process. So if you're in process, that's what I'm guessing most of us are. I don't think there's a ton of people sitting here going, I haven't chosen to forgive. I think most of us are at least trying to forgive, but we're in process and we don't know what's going on. Maybe we kind of feel lost in the process. We don't know, how far we've made it. We're not sure how far we have to go. Or maybe you have just kind of sat down in the road and you're just kind of stuck in process. You're not making progress in the process. So let's talk about the process. Let's talk about the process. I want to give you 5 ways, I guess, to not get stuck. 5 ways to move along, to get out of the weeds and back onto the path of the process towards that state of forgiveness, how to move towards that. So 5 things. First of all, remember that the battle's in your mind. The battle's in your mind. You get lost in the process right here, between your ears. See, if you choose to forgive, you make the decision, but then you indulge in angry, bitter thoughts all the time, if you allow your brain to go there all the time, well, your decision kind of meant nothing. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you just indulge in those thoughts about what happened to you, allowing anger to wash over you all the time, if you can't stop thinking about what you want to say to that person or what you want to do to that person, that choice that you made becomes moot. It'd be like choosing to get in shape and then turning around and eating whatever you want. Cool, happy you made the decision, but you got to do some things to actually follow up with the decision. The decision is the beginning of the thing, not the thing itself. You got to be mentally tough. You're going to have to push those thoughts back. Proverbs 23:7 says, "For as he thinks within himself, so he is." The idea is that your thoughts kind of dictate who you are. So guess what? If you consistently think bitter thoughts, what are you? You're going to have to fight here. This is where the battle happens. Now, related to that, here's your second thing. You need to fix your focus. You need to fix your focus because the saying is to forgive and forget, right? That's the saying. But you can't. Right? Isn't that frustrating? People say, forgive and forget. Well, guess what? I don't have a delete button on my memories. Wouldn't that be cool if you had a little X, click, delete, gone, like now I'm just happy all the time, blissful ignorance everywhere. Like that would be great. But that's not the way our minds work, right? You can't choose to forget something. But you can fix your focus. You can fix your focus. Philippians 4:8-9 say this. And now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. Keep putting into practice all you've learned to receive from me, everything you have heard from me and saw me doing. Then the God of peace will be with you. See, I think the writer of this verse, Paul, he knows you can't just forget stuff. So he says, no, fix your focus. You're focusing on the anger. You're focusing on the thing that happened. You're focusing on all those bitter thoughts. Don't do that. Replace them. Because that's the other thing you can't do. If you're caught up in trying to I'm just not going to think about that anymore. Good luck. You turn off a thought, well, it's like creating a vacuum. You have to fill it with something. You have to replace the thought, not just stop the thought. Don't be frustrated when you can't forgive and forget. If you're beating yourself up over that, it's an impossible thing. You can't forget. Keep fighting to replace those intrusive memories with other things. Pray about them. Give them to God and think about something else. And this says that the peace of God will be with you. That would be nice, right? Peace. Feeling bitter and angry is kind of the opposite of feeling peaceful, isn't it? Wouldn't it be nice to have some peace here rather than constantly just being kind of angry? Or kind of frustrated or kind of depressed? Wouldn't it be nice to have peace? You got to fight those bitter thoughts. You got to fight. You got to win this battle by fixing your focus. Third thing. So that's the first two. They're very related. You got to remember the battle's up here and you got to fix your focus up here. Third thing. Let go of your need to exact justice. This will get you stuck, right? Because you're going to be, here's what will happen. You'll be going through the process. And you made the decision. Well done, A+, you made the decision. You'll start moving, maybe even fighting that battle in your brain, trying to get away from some of these thoughts. But then you'll notice that the person that did the thing to you, they're like getting away with it. Like they're not paying for the thing. Matter of fact, they seem to be doing okay. And it'll start to bother you. And you'll feel this need to be the agent of justice on that person, right? Just like Ahithophel did. Ahithophel looked at David, and David's prospering in every way. He had some consequences, but whatever, that's not enough. So Ahithophel took it upon himself. Fine, God, you're not going to give justice down here? Well, I'm going to then. He wanted to be the agent of justice. But that'll get you stuck. That'll get you stuck. If you're struggling to forgive somebody and you still feel the need to be the one who exacts justice on them, that you're going to be in process, that you can't get out of process if you're doing that. And this is going to be really hard. You're going to have to let it go. And it's going to be really hard for you if you have a high sense of justice. So some of us in this room, you just have a higher sense of what is right and wrong, and you really want the scales of justice to be balanced. You're going to struggle with this because what happened to you is wrong. It just is. But you feel like forgiving them and then just letting them get away with it is somehow saying that it was okay. That's what you feel like. And you feel like you're doing God's work by trying to exact that justice. But I want you to know that forgiving someone and handing, it's not saying it was okay what they did. That's not what you're saying. What you're doing is you're handing over the responsibility for justice to God. You're handing it to Him. So you're not doing anything with it. You're not dropping it. You're giving it to God. Romans 12:17-19 say this: never pay back evil with more evil. Do things in such a way that everyone can see you are honorable. Do all that you can to live at peace with everyone. Dear friends, never take revenge. Leave that to the righteous anger of God. For the scriptures say, I will take revenge. I will pay them back, says the Lord. God says that's His job, not yours. You're outside of your job description. If you're trying to be the one who exacts justice, allow God to be the one who does that. Let go. Let go. And when you free that person from the prison of anger and bitterness in your head, and from the need to even the scales of justice, you're really freeing yourself. When you free them, you're freeing you. So let go of the responsibility to exact justice. That's God's job. He will do it in His timing. It probably won't be the way you want it to be. Probably won't be when you want it to be. But He is better at this than you are. And you got to trust Him in that. Fourth thing. Remember that God will use what happened to you. God will use what happened to you. If you're stuck in process, you need to remember that God wants to use the thing that was done to you for your good. I'm not sure how. I'm not sure when. Genesis 50:20 says this: you intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good. Everything that happens to you in your life, no matter how nasty, God wants to take that thing and use it to shape you into the person that He wants you to be. But you also need to remember that if you choose not to forgive, or if you stay stuck in process, God probably won't be able to use it. If you refuse to keep going down this path, He won't be able to get a hold of it. He won't be able to use it to turn you into the person He wants you to be. You're going to have to get through this process to allow God to mold you with that thing. So you got to get through. You got to get through. And here's the last thing. Ugh. Choose to bless the person who wronged you. Choose to bless the person who wronged you. This is for you. This one right here is for you if you feel like you've been in process for a really long time and you can't figure out why you're not at the state of forgiveness yet. Maybe the thing that will take you finally through the process and into the state is choosing to bless the person who wronged you. Luke 6:27-28 says this: but you who are willing to listen. I love how he starts with that, because what he's about to say is really hard. So if you're willing to listen, If you've been stuck in process for a really long time and you're not sure why you're still stuck, if you're willing to listen, I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who hurt you. See, because if we're honest, we see this command to pray for our enemies, and we think, okay, I'll pray for a rock to fall on their head, right? Check, did it, Jesus, you're welcome, like I was obedient. But if you take the whole thing that he says here, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, what? I mean, that's different. That's something else entirely in here. You're not just handing over the responsibility for justice to God. Now you're actually hoping for their ultimate good. Whew. And I know that's hard. But what if this is the door to the state of forgiveness? What if this is the door? And it's a door with rusty hinges and a handle that's really hard to turn. But what if this is the door? What if this is the thing that finally you're free of it? Because you're done, hating your enemies. You're done doing evil to those who hate you. You're done cursing those who curse you. And you're actually going to do this. And somehow the chains come off you. And the door opens. And on the other side is actually the state of forgiveness. It might just be it. So, my dual message today is if you have somebody in your life who you have not decided to forgive, make that decision, enter the process today. And if you're stuck, which one of these is God kind of impressing on your mind today? Do you need to remember that it's up here? Fix your focus. Do you need to let go of the need for justice? Do you need to remember that God's going to use this thing if you let him? Or do you maybe need to bless the person? Pray for their ultimate good.